Do you find those after-dinner games between the generations exciting? Here's my favorite, Monopoly. Monopoly on the Truth. To play Monopoly on the Truth, all you need to do is to think that your opinion is better than everyone else's, and you don't even need a playing board, okay?
Okay, Boomer.
Well, actually, it's not okay, because though Monopoly on the Truth is exciting and agitating and aggravating and... Stop!
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer.
Okay, kid. And it is okay, because I'm your okay boomer, Robert Rickman. Now we'll talk music. Music of the boomer generation and the millennials with Josh Wilhelm. Josh and I are about 35 years apart and 600 miles. No, 150 miles. No, that's not right. 8 miles? No. We're in the same place.
I'm sitting right here.
Okay, I forgot where we were supposed to record it. I remember driving somewhere, but well, welcome to the program, Josh.
Yes, thanks for having me, and thanks for coming and hanging out.
Yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it. We're going to talk about music. But first, I have to explain to you one thing that a lot of people other than baby boomers get wrong. It's about the spelling of a name of a group.
Okay, enlighten me.
Beatles is pronounced Beatles. Now, why you all got it wrong for all these years, I don't know.
Wow, yeah, I have had that wrong. I thought it was Beatles. Who knew?
I could see you making that type of mistake, yes. Anyway, the Beatles were what defined me in my generation. I was born in the early 50s.
Yeah.
And in 1964, the Beatles, the Beatles. Listen, we'll pronounce it your way.
Perfect. Let's do it. Let's go.
The Beatles appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Okay.
And all the girls were screaming in the audience, and my folks are going, I can't understand the words. They won't last long. And I'm sitting there going, hey, this is neat. And then that spring, in I think it was 6th grade, some of the teachers got dressed up like the Beatles and sang. And that set things off. The Beatles was the defining group for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think as soon as they hit the scene, they just took the world by storm, right?
They did.
Yeah.
What I found interesting about them and looking at it from all these years, they didn't have somebody with a very low voice, boom, 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 like they used to have in the music earlier to that.
Yeah, like the doo-wop era.
Yeah, doo-wop. They all had more or less high to moderate pitched voices that were in perfect harmony.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think that's what was one of the things that defined them against all the other music played at the time.
Yeah. That's definitely, that's one of those things that would really set you apart, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I was born in 89, so I don't know that you can technically call me an 80s baby because I was like most of my growing up was actually in the 90s and more formatively, was like in the 2000s. So I grew up on that like 90s, 2000. And I remember growing up, my dad listened to a lot of like classic, what would be considered classic rock,
Me too.
The Eagles, Aerosmith, AC/DC, that was kind of his world of music. He also really liked a lot of like 90s country at the time. And so I think that formed a lot of my music taste. But really when I hit those formative years in the 2000s, it was really about some of the new metal, new rock bands where I really found my love and voice. And I just remember my dad, especially the band Creed. These guys right here. That was one of the first like new rock bands that I fell in love with. And my dad said the same thing. Like, I can't understand that crap. It's just loud noise, blah, blah, blah. But I loved it. It's the thing that I fell in love with.
Now, what was the theme? Was it anti-establishment? Was it anti-war? What was it?
Yeah. So one thing that I really noticed, every generation has the sex, drugs, and rock and roll,
Right.
like the partying, the living the dream, So if you take that kind of out of the equation, I was really surprised to find that like in the early 2000s, we had 9/11.
Mhm.
And with that, there was a lot of music that was kind of unifying, like bringing us together. Like, Toby Keith had, his big song about America, and I'm losing the name of the song right now, which is really frustrating. But I think, so that was kind of a big theme. But I think the thing that was even bigger that really hit was a lot of like anti-establishment, anti-war, because following 9/11, we had the war.
Right.
And I think the biggest album that really showcases that is American Idiot by Green Day.
Uh-huh.
And they call it a rock opera, which I find to be kind of funny.
Mhm.
But its whole theme is, against the establishment, against the war. And I was really surprised that as I started digging into this, that there are a lot of similar themes to the boomer music.
Yes. The Beatles went from a teeny bopper type music, I want to
Yeah.
hold your hand.
Yeah.
And then they started singing peace songs
Mm,
and anti-war songs.
yeah.
And then when they split up, that continued. And the theme, when the Vietnam War really got started in the late 60s, was anti-war. And the university I attended, Southern Illinois University, was closed down by riots in 1970, and the National Guard had to be called in.
Dang.
So this was happening all over the country. And so the theme was anti-establishment. Singers used to call it the man.
Yep.
And also the dress was anti-establishment. Long hair, like the Beatles, they started it.
Really?
Yeah, long hair and blue jeans to show that we're just, just like the people, when in reality they came from suburbs,
Right.
college prep
Right.
schools, and then wearing your hair natural,
Mm-hmm.
meaning don't comb it, beard, and all that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the establishment people, who were dressed much like you are now, would say, get a haircut. Get a haircut, man. Take a shower. You need a shower.
Yeah. Bunch of hippies.
Yeah, a bunch of hippies. And this stuff was happening all over, and it happened for years. It was anti-establishment, anti-war. Now, it wasn't the entire generation.
Yeah.
Because where I went to school in Southern Illinois, you had a lot of people from Chicago, some from New York. But the Southern Illinoisans, the rural people, were more for the war and did not like this peaceful, anti-establishment
Yeah.
type of people there. So you had a split. However, I had a friend of mine who was a disc jockey at our college station and who worked in broadcasting over the years. He was a radio and TV major. He told me that he never listened to the lyrics. His favorite songs were by sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were a lot of people during that time who felt the same way. They didn't pay attention to the lyrics.
Huh.
What do you think it's like now, or for your generation?
Well, I think it's kind of the same. And I know that I am definitely not the norm because I love music. I live it. I mean, you can kind of see it here in the studio.
Guitars all over.
Yeah. So I know how I engage music and take it in is a lot different from like my peers. I'll use my wife, for instance. She's the same way. Sometimes like some of the stuff she listens to, I look at her, I'm like, did that say what I think it just said? And she's like, I don't know. I'm just bopping to it.
Could you give me an example?
Yeah. And so, I think there's a lot of people in my generation that they just want the bop, right? They want just something to like jam to or dance to.
That's
or whatever
the way it
is.
was with us.
Yeah. But I think that, I think there is still a subset of people that do get really serious about like, what do the lyrics say?
Yes.
And I definitely take that into consideration, just the stuff that I listen to, because it's just like, what you're putting in is also what's going to come out. Right.
Right. What do you listen to that particularly resonates with you?
Ooh, I wasn't prepared for that question.
Okay, here's the next question.
Yeah.
Have you stopped beating your wife?
Oh, no.
No, he hasn't. And for $35, I'll make sure no one knows about it.
Oh, man. To be fair, if I tried to do that, she'd probably kick my butt. So
We'll keep that in mind, folks.
so there is, definitely when I like get a new album, I am listening for uh the I call them bangers, the songs that you just want to like turn up and like
Yeah.
rock to, right? So, when I first like get an album, I'm looking for those. And those are probably going to be the ones that I throw on a playlist and I continue to listen to.
Right.
But if you take the whole album and listen to it together and let it slow down, that's where you start finding the gold. So I'll just use, for example, it's actually sitting over there. But an album just came out by a band that was popular, became very popular in the early 2000s, Linkin Park. They lost their lead singer in about 2016, so they've been very silent since then. They've just regrouped and just released a new album. And the singles that they released were fine. They were good. There were a couple of bangers in there. But what I found was that as I got into the album, like the last two songs in that album are killer.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that I'm actually going back and like replaying now versus the others. So, I love albums like that where it's just not, the singles aren't just the best songs. There's a
Yeah.
lot of music out there where the singles
Yeah.
are the best. But I love that where you can dig into and it's like they actually saved the good stuff for like the people that actually buy this album.
That's interesting because that is almost the opposite of the way it was when I was growing up.
Hmm.
I'm originally from Chicago, and that was considered one of the best radio markets in the country. And stations like WLS and WCFL would have their own surveys. They would go to record stores and find out what the biggest sellers were,
Mhm.
and they'd number them. Number one, that type of thing.
Right.
But that was based on radio play, of course, and then
Mhm.
people bought the records.
Yeah.
They played cuts on albums, but they were singles. So people did indeed buy the albums, but they might have been going through the same thing where maybe She Loves You was, or A Hard Day's Night of the Beatles, their album, that was the number one song, and it was on the album, and maybe there was something else on the album that they liked better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Only this time you can download the album, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
whereas you had to buy it in the old days.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting. I think what's old is actually becoming new.
Yes.
So I am just one of many people that have gotten into vinyl. I didn't grow up with vinyl. I grew up with CDs and then, digital music and streaming and stuff like that. And I love streaming services. I love Apple Music because I have access to all the music whenever I want.
Yeah.
And it gives me an opportunity to find new artists and new music that I love. But there is something about having that physical product, like something actually in your hand. You put it on the turntable and you can just sit there and you listen to the album. You can't just skip to your favorite song. You can, but it's not an easy experiment to try and get that needle to drop right where you want it. But it is crazy how popular vinyl is right now. And there are some people that are collecting it and not even listening to it. They almost want it just for, collector's sake. But there's a lot of people that love that old, tangible, feel the music.
Yep.
That's new again.
This is interesting. The way you're dressed is the way we didn't dress back in the 70s. I had longer hair. I was relatively clean cut, but you had people with beards, long hair.
Mm-hmm.
And the older people, World War II generation, Korean War, they dressed like you. So now it's coming back again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, vinyl is coming back. Now, I disc jockeyed for a while from time to time. You had to cue up there, cue it up. And then, I frankly don't care to go back to vinyl. I like just click, 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 and there it is.
This is amazing.
So it's coming back. We're agreeing, but we're agreeing
in opposite
directions. Yeah, I can do it without. I have CDs in my van, and I'm looking around in my car, looking around for where the hell oh, there it is. Oh, it's broken.
Yeah.
So I just don't chink.
Yeah.
So for me, it's changed. Now, the audio sound I hear, some people say the analog sound is better than digital, but I haven't heard a fair comparison yet between digital of something and the same recording made analog and played on a record.
Yeah.
I'd like to compare these two.
And there is a difference, and I've seen some videos that show like in the waveform,
Right.
what happens, and what happens with these streaming services is they like over compress them, and then they like chop
Right.
the top and the bottom off of
Mhm.
it. So what does that mean to you? Most people either just listen to it on their phone like this, or through
Yeah.
cheap headphones or whatever headphones come with the phone. So those aren't necessarily made to you know, give like a high fidelity sound like you would get in like some of these big, hi-fi stereo setups. And I think in a situation like that, if you had, $1,000 speakers, $3,000 turntable, and then you have an amp where you can play a digital song through, you may be able to hear it. Especially if you kind of have an ear for that thing. But
Mhm.
I would say for most people, it's so negligible that most people are just fine with the sound of the what you get from a streaming service. I will say, I have bought. It's not an expensive um, record player, but it's a lot nicer than what I had previously. And there is just a life to vinyl. That's the only word I can use. Is there's a lot of people will say warmth, but I'm just going to call it life. There's a life to it that you don't get when you're just listening to the streaming version of it.
Well, if you look at how the thing is made, a record is made with hills and dales, and the needle rides on top of it, goes up and down. So
Mhm.
there's a mechanical function, and then
Yeah.
you've got the little sensor inside of the tone arm that translates it into electricity. So, and in some ways, there is a life to it.
Yeah.
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 And you can put it on your shelf.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's black magic, but we'll call it life.
Yeah, and we boomers are responsible for it, but we're not talking. Well, what else do you have? Any more observations about that? They're not really that different. We're looking at things from a perspective of a different generation. We agree on things, but it's kind of an unusual agreement. You're nice and clean cut. I'm kind of disheveled and like
This
the
guy.
'60s. And here you are in the 25s almost.
White
You
t-shirt
like
jeans.
vinyl. I like what is it? What's the name of that? Wave. I like waves.
Mm.
You like vinyl LP 33 and a third, 45 and yes. One of the other things I didn't like about disc jockeying was you didn't shift at the 33, you'd get on the LP.
Yeah.
Can't do that with a wave.
Yep.
So we agree on pretty much everything, and there is a common core, and that is sex, rock and roll, and drugs.
Yeah.
And all this music going back to Bill Haley and the Comets.
Yeah. What is it? Run Around Sue?
Yeah,
That was
that's it.
definitely
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And the one thing that we really didn't get to talk about, which is just that radio's the worst. I'm not throwing a shade at your former career, but listening to music on the radio these days, it hurts me. It hurts me so bad. Just because if you're not listening to the same 3 songs every time you get in the car, you're listening to ads for 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's over. It used to be the top 40,
Yeah.
number 35, dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Number one. And the kids would hear they had no choice. They either bought the record
Yep.
or listened to the radio. Now you have so many other options, and radio revenues are declining, and now television revenues are declining.
Yep.
And I listen to the radio occasionally in my car, just for old time's sake, but I don't have I've got a radio in storage.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to an actual radio in years, and I think it's pretty much obsolete. AM radio stations are signing off. You don't need an AM transmitter anymore.
Nope.
FMs are still being used, but the future is not radio or television as we know it. They might find other uses for this type of transmission. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Because Wi-Fi is basically radio, but it's two-way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree with you. Some of the rock stations I've listened to, You can't skip ahead,
Right?
You have to sit there and listen or turn it off.
Right. Right. And I wouldn't mind it if I was able to listen and like, oh, hey, I've never heard this artist. Who is this? And
Over
go down there.
and over.
It is the
and
same.
because those are the ones that sell. They're the number one, and you've heard it over and over.
I know.
Click. Okay, that's it. We're not going to put this on the radio.
Yes.
Josh, it was wonderful. I enjoyed
Yes.
it. I didn't expect us to agree on so many things.
I know, especially a boomer and a millennial agreeing on music somehow. That's pretty amazing.
It's frightening. Until next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That was Josh Wilhelm, owner of JW Creates. JW Creates designs websites, logos, album covers, and podcasts. And OK Boomer was recorded in the JW Creates studios in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay, Boomer.
As for this boomer, well, I spent decades in radio and TV news and aviation. Now I'm semi-retired and strongly believe that people are getting tired of rampant tribalism and are working now towards cooperation. So I figured let's start out with generation-to-generation talks. And though we may disagree at times, we also realize that none of us have a monopoly on the truth. And that's okay. You're okay. And I'm okay. And this is your OK Boomer, Robert Rickman.
Okay, Boomer. Okay, Boomer.
Okay, Boomer!